What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. And today we'll be taking a look over here at the Bitcoin price chart, which has had some action here just in the last 30 minutes after the stock market opened. We'll, of course, talk about the altcoin market. I got a couple other things that I want to bring up in today's video. But first things first, we'll take a look at the price action that's going on right now. As you guys know, we've been following this fractal that's been happening for Bitcoin for the last several months. Of course, this is more so of just a shorter time frame, and I know several months sounds like a long time, but a shorter time frame of really what's been going on for the big picture of Bitcoin on a massive nearly 4.236 extension hit over here on the price chart. But as we know, it did hit it over there on the market cap chart. Heading back to log scale, we'll zoom in a little bit and you can see the price action that's been happening now. So expectations were that it would be pretty boring down here if this thing did continue to follow. And as we can see back in here just a couple of days ago, well, if it was going to continue on these time frames, well, expecting a dip back down to the lows if it continued repeating it, right? My personal thought is that there's no way they're going to keep this thing going for as long as they've kept it going for. A reminder, this is a bear market fractal that has been playing out here. This is pulled from 2018, and you can see they've been playing it completely perfectly the whole time. My expectation has been that they'll eventually deviate away from this, and we'll have some type of ABC correction, but we can see what it would look like if it did continue playing along just like that. You end up getting your retracement that goes back up in there to about the 618 Fibonacci extension in here. But one thing that has started to deviate, and it's a little bit early to say if it is or isn't, is what's been going on in here, right? You could see that there wasn't a dip back down to the lows here. It's almost like as if it attempted to, but it got bought up and then pushed up a little bit higher. This is different from what we saw back in this fractal where you saw the high was placed over here. I'll zoom in a little bit closer and you can see that this was the top of this area right here. Then a pull down. It just never happened and it kept going, right? And then ended up bull flagging in here, trying to break out of a trend. And I'm not a big trend line type person. You could see that in there underneath the trend, then eventually breaking out and then coming back for a back test. But whether or not it still is going to go back down there and test those lows once again, or have we skipped that part? Has the fractal changed? It's always possible. I'm not really big in huge on sitting here and saying these fractals have to continue playing out. I've outlined my personal thoughts on it that I think it's more likely that eventually we have somewhat of a big move up and then an ABC that comes out, and then finally it ends up breaking down. But has it already started to deviate away right now, right? So if we look at time, right, if we want to pretend that time matters, we can see how close this thing has actually been. And as you can see, time has passed from when, we had that dip back down to the lows. So has too much time passed to say that it has deviated away from that just yet? And if we look in here for when the major moves ended up occurring in here on a time basis, the biggest gap of time that we ended up having was actually right in here. And you can see that this was actually off by about 3 days. So right now, currently, it's sitting at off by about 2 days. So 2.5 days. So hard to know. I'm not going to sit here and say, yep, it's past it. Just because of the single fractal, we can't go back down and touch the lows. No, definitely not. I still think it's very possible we go back down and touch those lows again. And predicting what's going to happen in the short-term time frame is very difficult. I like to focus more on the bigger picture of what's going on. If I spent every day sitting here trying to guess what's going to happen within the next day or within the next 12 hours, I would be wrong 90% of the time. And I'm just not going to I'm not going to entertain that, which is why we spend so much time talking about the bigger picture of everything, right? That typically when these things happen, you go on, you set your new all-time high just barely and you pull all the way back down like this. It's about monitoring what happens in this retrace right here. And if Bitcoin's top is in, which I suspect it is, as we talk about all the time, be about watching what happens with the altcoin market right then. Now, one thing that has happened, of course, is MicroStrategy has come out and announced that they bought another 660 Bitcoins for $37,865 per Bitcoin, bringing their average cost basis to $30,200 per Bitcoin. It's debatable on whether or not when these announcements come out, if the price falls afterwards. We can kind of put little marks here on the last several times that MicroStrategy has come out to make these announcements. We can see that this one back here in November, a couple of days before a big fall, they made another announcement right here. Price did stay flat for the next, month or so. And then, they made an announcement right here, then price fell. And then now they made an announcement yesterday and we can see price moving down. Debatable. I don't know if we can truly make any type of reference to whether or not not there is an influence on there or not. I find the argument a little bit stronger to say, hey, look at this fractal, look at how it's behaving. This is typical normal behavior of a market. From the structure and from the time perspective, these things are all normal. So hard to say if there's really any influence in there, but interesting nonetheless. Now, on to a new topic. If you didn't catch bcbacker.crypto yesterday, he did announce that I will be going on to his show next Tuesday. So I'll be on his live show next Tuesday. I'm sure we're going to be talking about charts, all kinds of stuff. So that'll be fun. Also trying to work on some scheduling to go on here with the On the Chain live guys with Jeff and Chip. Still working on firming that up. But hopefully I can make you guys proud over there on the bcbacker.crypto channel. Otherwise, the market has just been really tame for the last few days. So there's not a whole lot new to say what has happened with the actual market. We can see XRP, it's just been flat in here this time period. We've talked about this structure, typical crash, retrace, reaccumulation. So long as this low does hold, this is a normal structure as long as the low holds. Bitcoin, we've been monitoring this for several weeks on end now. Big question is, are we going to eventually get that? We can look at the relative strength index topping out over here at 60. Typically 60 is that marking point where it just cannot get enough strength to reverse itself. And you'll see that all the time. This is on the 4-hour time frame. One thing I'll be watching for when the price does go into some type of a retracement in here is going to be what the daily time frame looks like. So I'll give you kind of a heads up on that too, is that be looking to see about this 60 level on the RSI when we go back into that. And I'm going to bet you, I'm just going to make a wild, crazy guess at this point, that when this price moves back up into some type of retracement, we're going to watch that the RSI is actually going to get stopped out right in here on the daily time frame. But that also does seem to be the problem we're having currently right now over here on the 4-hour time frame ever since late December. So here we are in February right now, not able to get into bullish territory for relative strength. And this is typical during bearish time periods, is that we still hang out in here near the lows and oversold territory, try to get some momentum back to the upside. 60 is really the stopping point. So question is whether or not, are we heading back to the lows right now, or is this thing just going to bull flag here for a few days? And if it just keeps bull flagging, well, then, it's the same old story, right? There's not a whole lot to say going on in the market right now until structurally a big reversal can present itself. And I think people do try to overcomplicate it, because the thing that drives people the craziest is price action just sitting flat, and not only just sitting flat, but boring after a prolonged period of downward price action. And we all try to overanalyze it. We try to make sense of it to say, hey, it's going to break out at this minute. How can I find something that says, hey, we're ready to go, something's going to happen? And, really looking at it, the most likely things that seem to be in here are that, one, incredible boredom for, several weeks, or two, revisiting the lows. That just seems to be the most likely. There's nothing on the indicators that are saying, hey, it's ready to, short squeeze and go flying high. We can look at the shorts that are over there on Bitfinex. It's nothing substantial, but it is higher. We talked about how shorts were at all-time lows back in May before the fall happened. We talk about shorts set even new lows, which means that there was nobody shorting the market back there in November. So there was no shorts over here on Bitfinex at the top. We can see that as the prices move down, now shorters are coming in here, but nothing substantial, right? Look at that number, 2,000 contracts in May or in June when the bottom came in back then, 25,000 of them. So only 2,000. And if you take this off log scale, you get a real better kind of picture of that, of what that looks like. Not substantial amounts of shorting. So I don't see anything really indicating to me that a big short squeeze is going to come. I think the thing that's most likely is that, one, revisiting the low, or two, several more weeks of boredom over here. And then it goes back to saying, hey, let's just repeat the same thing that we've said over and over again. But the broader picture, the bigger perspective picture, is waiting for a retrace, right? We're just going through a bottoming process that's going to take a little bit of time. And then the big focus is going to be on when the retrace comes. But the bigger, broader perspective of this is that Bitcoin's hit a 4.236 extension on the market cap, just shy over there on the actual price chart. And this is a bear market fractal, a bear market structure. And we can continue to use this as a reference until it's no longer relevant anymore. So when does this become irrelevant at some point, right? Let's say that the price of Bitcoin just suddenly fired up to right here or something like that, right? Now we're out. This is no longer relevant anymore because it has been so precise ever since September. Until then, the most logical thing to do is to lean on it, for me at least, to say, well, we've been doing it the whole time. Let's wait until they finally say something different's going to happen. So the thing we can lean on is saying, hey, it's probably going to double bottom or be incredibly boring for several weeks. And so if I'm going to have to sit here and be patient for several weeks, well, then what is the bigger, broader perspective? It's that Bitcoin's hit a 4.236 extension over here on the market cap that is yet to have any type of retrace in here. It's very common for tops to come in at 4.236 extensions. And we know that the retrace back in 2018, 2017 was the thing that led to a massive alt season and additional new all-time highs, particularly for Cardano and for XRP and many different altcoins into this retrace moment right here after the initial fall. That was when things got very exciting. We haven't had a retrace in here. Question is this a common structure that eventually leads to some type of retracement? Yes, it's very common that we see an exciting phase happen in the market, just like we did back here in 2017 and we did here in early 2021. Common to see a big fall happen like this, and then we rise back up, breaking into a new all-time high, then back testing these price levels, just like we did back in here, then one more further extended push before the end came in, right? So when the end comes in, what typically happens after that? You end up having some type of retracement that comes in. So structurally, everything looks very normal for Bitcoin in here to go into a retracement. It's just, what is this bottoming process going to look like and how long is it going to take? I don't have the answer for that. The thing that I can lean on is, what does the structure look like? And does it seem logical? It seems very logical. Very normal topping pattern that typically leads to the initial rejection that leads into a retracement. Does it make sense to be a topping pattern? Absolutely it does, with hitting a 4.236 extension. Now it's all about being patient for this to work itself out, like we have going on in here, and working our way up in there. And the thing that's going to be the most likely, so from a psychological perspective, it's always important for me to understand what is the psychology going to be like. And being here for several years doing this YouTube channel, I get a really good bird's eye view of what psychology is like and sentiment is like. Sentiment is very low right now. We're also in extreme fear over there on the fear and greed index. All those things are very typical of bottoms working out. The most common thing to end up occurring is that people will doubt it, that it will end up rise the entire time. So however long this is, however painful this is, there will be doubt all throughout here until we finally get up in here. And then all the excitement will return at that very last moment. So it's likely not going to be an easy ride through this moment down in here, because of the things that I've seen before, is that doubters will doubt the whole time, and then optimism will return in here, which would be equivalent to being like right here. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is to just be patient. And right now, when I look at these charts and I look at what's going on in the market, for me, it just screams, I've got to be patient right now. I'm very glad to see that everything that's happening with Bitcoin in the market is normal. A 4.236 extension rejection is normal. This fractal is normal. And something else that would be very normal would be a retracement. And it's just about having to wait and be patient to see if that time can come sometime soon. And the things that will provide something interesting to talk about will be if we head back down to these lows and we see altcoin capitulations happen at that time period, or have we already skipped that step and it got bought up in here and we're now just bull flagging in here for a little while. I think one of the things that had people really afraid during this past week was what was going on with the stock market. You had a lot of the financial personalities out there on television screaming the sky was falling, and we can see over the course of the last 2 weeks, the stock market, the Dow Jones has recovered 2,200 points since the sky was falling a week and a half ago. That's optimistic to see happening in here. And I think in general, that's a good sign for Bitcoin and for the altcoin market. But if I had to make my best guess of, are we going to revisit the lows? Are we ready to break out and go much higher? I think the key sign that we're not seeing yet is the altcoin market. And I've talked about this over the course of the last week or two, is that typically when bullish reactivation has happened in the market, we see it happening over there in the altcoins first. And we haven't seen that happen just yet. So it's telling me there might still be a trick up the sleeve over here on Bitcoin before it confirms that it's ready to start moving back into a retracement, right? So, I mean, we can lean on this fractal all we want. We can say, hey, look, it tells us that we double bottom. It tells us that we go back to the lows all we want. But in the end, that's really more of just a guessing game right here on that it's going to continue to follow it. But do we see anything in the altcoin market telling us that it's not going to do it? No, we don't. We don't see those altcoins popping off. We don't see it getting some type of signal of that was it. It's done. Every move from now on for Bitcoin is going to be back to the upside. We don't see that signal coming from the altcoin market yet. So it's still just a game of patience. And that's why I know it's hard, right? We all want to get caught up in the short-term time frames. We want to see something happen immediately. But what I try to do is focus, well, what's happening on the really big time frame? What is the broad perspective of what is actually happening here in Bitcoin and in crypto? And it's this, right? And let's just pretend it even moved at the pace of what my squiggly lines look like right there on the screen. While that looks like it, symmetrically matches of what the chart could look like, even something like that gets you out there until June or July for it to even look something like that. And of course, I have no way to know what it's going to look like when it happens, but from a symmetrical standpoint, it would make sense that it goes that slow. So here we are in early February, and you have to understand every single day we want something big to happen. We want this big moment to occur in the market. And I can tell you from being through the C19 sell-off, which was back here, which on this scale, it just doesn't even seem that big anymore, that it was really something big. But at the time, it was very catastrophic. At that time, that big fall in Bitcoin was, 58% happening very quickly, 58%. And then, it took some time to work its way out of there. And, everybody got drawn into it when things started moving really fast. But for us to really start getting that momentum going, things didn't happen quickly in the beginning. So I wish I could predict time for you guys. I can't. I can show you kind of what things are looking like on the shorter time frame compared to things we've seen before. But again, the broader perspective of is this. This is what normally happens in these types of situations. And for those who have been following the channel closely, I actually lean on that. We're not going to continue this fractal once this thing is done and once this thing is wrapped up, that I'm going to, I'm guessing, right? I'm betting we're not going to do something like this to go back up. It would be too obvious to continue that for too long. And that I keep pointing over here to the inverse price chart of Bitcoin, and that I think this is just a very common structure of what we have happening here for Bitcoin. And that in these structures, it's typically this long period of a retracement that comes in here. And that we could see what happens when we start moving back up into these zones up in here, that, it looks like it typically works this out for a minute in here before it eventually ends up doing that and going into that super long retracement on the inverse chart, right? Let me flip this back up to the correct orientation. And you could see it would be something like that. And I mean, that could take you out into 2023 if it did something at this same velocity that happened in here. Now, that'd actually probably be pretty good for the altcoin market, don't you think, to get that much time to be able to reset up and go for some big fat run in the altcoin market? I think so. I know that the Bitcoin community will take this as being FUD. I'm not here to try to spread FUD. I am just showing you these charts, man. You can think they're nonsense. You can think they're crazy all you want. But even when we flip that upside down, right? So we're looking at what the bottom of 2018's bear market for Bitcoin looked like. You see the same thing that we talked about here in the earlier part of the video, right? The initial run up that eventually has a big fall. And then what happens? It sets a new all-time high and then backtests this area, goes on and sets a new high, pulls back down into these price levels once again, and then what happens? It ABC corrects into here. That is exactly what this fractal is down here at the bottom of the 2018 bear market for Bitcoin. If we just flip it upside down, and here I'll invert this right here, and you can see that that's exactly what I did. See, you have your initial big run up, you set a new high, pulls back down, one additional high, big fall back down into these areas right in here, and then long, grueling ABC retracement right back into retracement levels in here before it then eventually ends up going down. And so that's my grander idea of what I believe is going on with Bitcoin currently, is that, this is our big run up in 2021. We have the big fall back there in May, June, and July. We go on and we set a new high, pull back, one more final extension, and then the big fall down in here. And that this is where we are right now. When we take a bigger look over here at Bitcoin, and that's what happened, right? You have your first big rise up, your first big fall, pulls up, barely sets a new high, barely sets a new high, your pullback, your final extension, your pullback, your final extension, and then your big deep fall back into these price levels, right? Which is where we are right now, pulling all the way back down into these price levels, and then setting up for a long drilling period for Bitcoin. So even this taking you out there to July, if you went at this rate in here, I mean, you can just get kind of an understanding. It could be a long time. But as you know, most of you know, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm also not a hater of Bitcoin. And if you've been with my channel for a long time, you know that I know that Bitcoin brings the rest of the altcoin market to the party. It is, if you study the charts of the inception of Bitcoin and how the altcoin seasons have worked, it is always dictated by Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the king. Bitcoin is the dictator of the market. If you ignore Bitcoin and you ignore what it's doing, then you're just not paying attention to the whole market. So it's real important to pay attention to Bitcoin. Bitcoin does deserve the respect that it's earned because the charts prove it. So I'm not here to poo poo on Bitcoin. But what has happened over here for Bitcoin is with this 4.236 extension and all the normal structures of it, of what happens when tops come in, a big rise, big fall, and then two final pushes to go up and falling back down into these areas, as I've shown in multiple examples, that's very normal to occur. And then heading into some type of an ABC retracement, which is also what happened back in 2018 that sent a lot of these altcoins, including XRP, off into a big, massive surge. And so we're setting up structurally for that type of thing to occur. It's just in the short term time frame, having to be incredibly patient. But the big question is, does the bigger term time frame indicate any of these things to us that these things could happen? I don't try to come on here and be a magician and a legend and from the future. I try to show you everything and the reasons why I believe the things that I do for you to be able to make your own decision, your own informed decision. Because I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not an investment advisor, but I'll show you everything on the charts so you at least understand where I'm coming from. I don't ever try to, sell you on the idea that I'm some guy who has these secrets that are hidden in my pocket. And the only way you're going to do well is if you rely on these secrets that I have that I'm not telling you about. And that's not what I do. I try to show you everything. And hopefully, laying out the foundation of all these things that I've shown in this video give you just a clear idea. This is why I feel the way I do. I wish I could tell you how long it's going to take for a bottoming process to come in here. We can look at all the different structures on how they've happened and how quick they can come out of there. And we can look at the current fractal of what we're doing right now. None of them's going to give us the definitive answer on how long it's going to take. But all of the examples that we've looked at in here show some type of ABC correction is the most likely thing to occur next. And we know that when the top of Bitcoin happened in 2017 and 18, into the ABC correction was the exciting time for the altcoin market. And so that's where I stand. And while we just sit here patiently waiting on Bitcoin to give us a direction to confirm, hey, a bottom's in, or go set the bottom, as we just still crawl throughout here, it's always dangerous to post this meme because it is like you're poking the bear. Come on, Bitcoin, do something. But all right, guys, that's it. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope that you guys are having a good week. We're halfway through the week. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you're looking for something to do, of course, you can check out my website, bcbacker.com. This is a course I put together where I deep dive into the previous Bitcoin bull runs, the previous altcoin market cycles, tying them all together, showing you how the cryptocurrency market has worked in the past. Structured a lot like my YouTube channel, where it's me talking about charts and showing you things, not so much like a PowerPoint presentation. I try to keep it very similar to my YouTube channel. I talk about my personal exit plans in here. I talk a lot about mathematics and percentages, and I teach you how to set up your own charts and your own indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro so you can do your own charting. I do have updates in here. The most recent one, like I mentioned a couple of days ago, is I made the January 31st market update in there, and you can check out all of this educational content over here on bcbacker.com. You can follow me over here on Twitter at bcbacker. And I want to thank you so much for watching my channel. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick me up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.